My best man revealed at my wedding reception that he's been sleeping with my wife since our engagement. I was holding Olivia's hand when Garrett grabbed the microphone from the DJ. We'd just finished our first dance, her white dress spinning under the chandeliers at the Belmont Grand Hotel, 180 guests applauding as we walked back to our table. The DJ had started playing something upbeat, trying to get people on the dance floor, when the music cut out. I heard feedback screech through the speakers. I turned and saw Garrett standing on the small stage area, still wearing his best man tuxedo, holding that microphone like he was about to give a toast. I remember smiling because I thought that's exactly what he was doing. We'd been best friends since we were 9 years old, grew up 3 houses apart in the same neighborhood, played on the same little league team, went to the same college. Garrett giving a speech at my wedding seemed perfectly natural. I had no idea I was about to watch my entire life detonate in front of everyone I knew. "Can I have everyone's attention?" Garrett said into the microphone. His voice echoed across the ballroom. People stopped mid-conversation, turned toward the stage. My mother was sitting at the family table, already dabbing at her eyes because she'd been crying happy tears all day. Olivia's parents were near the bar, her father laughing at something with my uncle. Everyone looked happy, relaxed, ready for whatever Garrett had to say. "I need to tell you all something," Garrett continued. His voice was steady, but there was something in his tone that made my stomach tighten. Something off. Something that should have been said a long time ago. I squeezed Olivia's hand. She squeezed back, but when I glanced at her face, she'd gone completely pale. Not confused pale, terrified pale. That's when I knew. Before he said another word, I knew something was catastrophically wrong. "I've been sleeping with Olivia for the past 14 months, Garrett said. Just like that. Simple. Direct. The way you'd announced dinner was ready. Since 2 weeks after you proposed, and I can't stand here and watch you marry her without telling you the truth." The room didn't go silent immediately. There was a moment where people laughed, thinking it was a joke, a weird bit of bachelor party humor that had carried over. Then they saw Garrett's face, saw mine, saw Olivia pull her hand away from mine like I'd burned her. That's when the silence hit. I'd been with Olivia for 3 years when I proposed. We met at a marketing conference in Austin, both working for competing firms, both bored during a keynote speech about brand synergy or some corporate nonsense neither of us cared about. We'd ended up sitting next to each other, making sarcastic comments under our breath about the presenter's PowerPoint animations. By the end of the conference, we'd exchanged numbers. By the end of the month, we were dating. She was smart, funny, ambitious in a way that matched my own drive. We pushed each other professionally, celebrated each other's wins, supported each other through the brutal hours our industry demanded. When I got promoted to creative director at my firm 18 months into our relationship, she was the first person I called. When she landed a major client 6 months later, I took her to the nicest restaurant in the city to celebrate. We built something together, or at least I thought we had. I proposed on the beach in Cape Cod during a weekend trip, got down on one knee at sunset with a ring I'd spent 2 months picking out, asked her to marry me in front of a dozen strangers who applauded when she said yes. I called Garrett that night from our hotel room while Olivia was in the shower. He was my best friend, had been since elementary school. Of course, he was the first person I wanted to tell. He'd congratulated me, said he was happy for us, said Olivia was amazing, and I was lucky. 2 weeks later, according to what he just announced to 180 wedding guests, he started sleeping with her. I stood there in my tuxedo, custom-fitted, perfectly tailored, costing more than my first car, and tried to process words that didn't make sense in any configuration that preserved my sanity. 14 months. That meant the entire time we'd been planning this wedding, choosing vendors, arguing about the guest list, doing cake tastings and venue tours, she'd been sleeping with my best friend. Every time Garrett had helped with wedding planning, every time he'd given input on the bachelor party or the seating chart or the playlist, he'd been sleeping with my fiancée. Every double date we'd gone on, every time the three of us had hung out, every casual dinner where Garrett and Olivia had sat across from each other and acted like normal friends, they'd been lying to my face. "What are you talking about?" I finally managed to say. My voice came out quieter than I intended. The microphone didn't pick it up. I tried again, louder. "What the hell are you talking about?" Garrett looked at me from the stage. For a second, I thought I saw guilt on his face. Then it was gone, replaced by something harder, something that looked almost like relief. "I'm sorry, man. I couldn't let you do this without knowing. You deserve to know who you're actually marrying." He pulled out his phone, and suddenly the screen behind him lit up. The same screen we'd used 20 minutes ago to show our engagement photos and childhood pictures during the reception intro. Now it was displaying text messages, Olivia's contact name, her profile picture, the one I'd taken of her at the beach last summer. The messages were explicit, time-stamped, impossible to deny. I turned to look at Olivia. She was still sitting next to me, frozen in her chair, her wedding dress pooling around her like a white nightmare. Her makeup was starting to run, mascara tracking down her cheeks, but she wasn't making a sound, just sitting there, staring at the screen, at the evidence of her own betrayal projected in front of everyone we knew. "Say something," I said to her. "Tell me this is fake. Tell me he's lying." She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. I watched her try to form words 3 separate times, watched her fail each time, And that's when I knew for certain it was all true. Every message on that screen, every timestamp, every hotel room and stolen afternoon and lie she'd told about working late or meeting a girlfriend for drinks, all of it was real. My mother was making a noise somewhere behind me, a kind of wounded gasping that made me want to throw up. My father was standing up, his face purple with rage or shock or both. Olivia's mother had both hands over her mouth. Her father was shouting something I couldn't process. The guests were pulling out their phones, already recording, already posting, already turning my humiliation into content. Garrett swiped to the next image on the screen. A photo this time. Him and Olivia in bed together, her face turned toward the camera, half smiling. The timestamp read 3 months ago. 3 months. We'd been finalizing our honeymoon plans 3 months ago, confirming flights to Bali, booking excursions, talking about spending 2 weeks alone together on the other side of the world, and she'd been in bed with Garrett. "Get off the stage," I said. My voice was surprisingly calm. I stood up slowly, set down my champagne glass with care, because my hands were shaking so badly I was afraid I'd drop it. "Garrett, get the fuck off the stage right now." He didn't move, just stood there holding his phone, looking at me with an expression I couldn't read. Pity? Defiance? Some twisted sense of righteousness? "You needed to know," he said, "before you signed the marriage license, before it was too late to back out. I couldn't watch you do this to yourself." The marriage license. We'd signed it earlier that day, during the ceremony, with our officiant and 2 witnesses. It was done. Legal. Binding. I was married to a woman who'd been cheating on me with my best friend for over a year. "How noble of you," I heard myself say. "Sleeping with my fiancé for 14 months and then telling me about it at my wedding reception. Real heroic, Garrett. Thank you for your service." Someone in the crowd laughed nervously, then stopped when they realized no one else was laughing. The hotel manager appeared at my elbow, a middle-aged woman named Patricia, who'd been professionally cheerful throughout all our planning meetings. Now she just looked stricken. "Sir, I think we should clear the room, under the circumstances." I nodded. Couldn't speak anymore. My throat had closed up. My chest felt like someone had parked a car on it. I watched Patricia signal to her staff, watched them start ushering people toward the exits, watched 180 guests file out in clusters, whispering, filming, bearing witness to the worst moment of my life. Garrett climbed down from the stage eventually, but before he could leave, my brother intercepted him. Liam, 2 years younger than me, quarterback in high school, still built like someone who could break you in half if properly motivated. He grabbed Garrett by the shoulder, spun him around, and hit him once, clean and hard, right in the jaw. Garrett went down. Liam stood over him, shaking out his hand, breathing hard. "You don't talk to him," Liam said. "You don't look at him. You get out of here and you don't ever come back." 2 groomsmen, guys I'd known since college, pulled Liam back before he could do more damage. Garrett got to his feet, touched his jaw gingerly, looked at me one more time. I thought he might apologize, thought he might try to explain. Instead, he just walked out, leaving his phone on the stage, the evidence of the affair still displayed on the screen behind me. When he was gone, I turned to Olivia. She was still sitting there, still crying silently, her hands twisted in her lap. "Is there anything you want to say?" I asked her. My voice sounded foreign, too calm, like it belonged to someone else. She looked up at me. "I'm sorry." 2 words. That's all she managed. "How long were you planning to keep lying?" I asked. "Were you ever going to tell me? Or were you just going to keep sleeping with him while married to me?" She flinched. "It wasn't supposed to happen. We didn't plan it. 14 months, Olivia. You didn't plan 14 months? You didn't plan every time you lied about where you were or who you were with? You didn't plan getting ready for our wedding while fucking my best friend?" My mother appeared beside me, her makeup completely destroyed, mascara streaked down her face. She put a hand on my shoulder. "Come on, sweetheart. Let's get you out of here." I let her guide me toward the exit. Behind us, I could hear Olivia saying my name, calling after me, but I didn't turn around, didn't look back. Just walked out of my own wedding reception, still wearing my tuxedo, still legally married to a woman I no longer knew. The hotel manager caught up with us in the lobby. "I'm so sorry about all of this," Patricia said. "We've never had anything like this happen before. Your deposit is fully refundable, of course, and we won't charge you for any of the services today." I stared at her. "You're giving me a refund on my wedding reception because my wife was cheating on me?" She looked uncomfortable. "I just wanted you to know we're here to help however we can. If there's anything you need..." What I needed was to go back in time and never meet Olivia, never introduce her to Garrett, never propose, never plan a wedding that would end with my humiliation broadcast to everyone I knew. But time machines didn't exist, so instead I said, "Thank you," and walked out into the parking lot where my brother had already pulled up his car. Liam drove me to his apartment in silence, didn't try to make small talk, didn't offer platitudes about how it would be okay, or how I'd get through this. Just drove, jaw clenched, knuckles white on the steering wheel. At his place, I sat on his couch, still wearing my tuxedo, and tried to process what had just happened. My phone was buzzing constantly. Texts from family, from friends, from people I barely knew who'd somehow already heard about the disaster at my reception. I turned it off. "You can stay here as long as you need," Liam said. He was in the kitchen, making coffee even though it was almost 9 at night. "Your room's the guest bedroom, second door on the left." I nodded. Couldn't find words. The shock was starting to wear off, replaced by a rage so pure and consuming it made my hands shake. I wanted to hit something, wanted to scream, wanted to find Garrett and make him hurt the way I was hurting. Instead, I sat there on my brother's couch, perfectly still, while my life fell apart in real time. The next morning, I called a lawyer. Found him through a referral from a colleague at work, Robert Thornton, 54 years old, 28 years practicing family law with a reputation for being ruthless and strategic. His office was downtown, modern and expensive, the kind of place that charged $500 an hour and worth every penny. "Technically, you're married," Robert said when I met with him Monday morning. I'd shown up still wearing the clothes I'd slept in at Liam's apartment, unable to go home because home was the condo I shared with Olivia, and I couldn't face seeing her yet. Massachusetts has a 60-day waiting period before a divorce is finalized, but given the circumstances, we can file immediately and push for an expedited process. What matters now is protecting your assets and gathering evidence. I pulled out screenshots I'd taken of the messages Garrett had projected at the reception, timestamps and all. Robert studied them carefully. "This is good, but I need more. I need a timeline, financial records showing suspicious charges, witness testimony if possible, and anything else that proves the affair was ongoing and deliberate." "Does your wife work?" "She's a senior account manager at a marketing firm," I said. "Makes about $95,000 a year." Robert made notes. "Any joint accounts? Checking, savings, and a joint credit card we use for household expenses. Everything else is separate." "Good. That makes division easier. I'm going to recommend you freeze the joint accounts immediately, open new individual accounts, and start separating your finances as much as possible. I also want you to change the locks on your residence if you're the primary leaseholder or owner. We rent together. Both our names are on the lease." Robert nodded. "Then you have a decision to make. Either one of you can stay, both of you can stay, or neither. But I strongly recommend not living together during divorce proceedings. It complicates things legally and emotionally." I thought about going back to that condo, seeing Olivia's things, sleeping in the bed where she'd probably been with Garrett while I was at work. "I'll stay with my brother," I said. "She can have the apartment." Over the next week, I moved out, took only what was mine, left behind everything we'd purchased together, every gift she'd given me, every photograph of us smiling like we had a future. Liam came with me, helped pack boxes, didn't ask questions when he found evidence of Garrett in our home, a razor in the bathroom that wasn't mine, a shirt in the back of the closet, size medium when I wore large, cologne I'd never seen before. Garrett had been in my home, in my space, probably in my bed. "Pack it," Liam said when he saw what I was holding. "Your lawyer will want it." I put everything in a box labeled evidence and sealed it with tape. That box sat in Liam's apartment for 3 days before I could bring myself to go through it properly. When I finally did, I found more than I wanted to. Receipts from restaurants I'd never been to, hotel charges on credit card statements I'd never fully examined, a whole shadow life that had existed parallel to the one I thought we were building. My phone rang constantly during those first few days, Olivia calling, texting, leaving voicemails that I couldn't bring myself to listen to. Garrett tried reaching out too, sent a message through a mutual friend saying he wanted to explain, wanted me to understand why he'd done it the way he did. I blocked his number, blocked Olivia's, told everyone we knew that I wanted zero contact with either of them. My parents wanted me to come stay with them, but I couldn't face my childhood home, couldn't handle my mother's hovering concern or my father's barely contained fury. Liam's apartment was neutral territory, a place where I could fall apart without witnesses. The video of Garrett's announcement went viral within 48 hours. Someone had posted it on social media, and it spread like wildfire. 3 million views in a week, then 5 million, then 10. News sites picked it up, ran think pieces about infidelity and public humiliation and the ethics of exposing affairs at weddings. Olivia and Garrett were both identified, tagged in posts, their faces and names attached to one of the most dramatic wedding disasters the internet had seen. Olivia's employer, a marketing firm that prided itself on reputation and client relationships, quietly asked her to resign. She lasted 2 weeks before the damage to their image became too much to ignore. Clients were calling, asking if this was the person representing their brand, if this was the judgment they were paying for. She was gone by the end of the month. Garrett worked in finance, a sector analyst at an investment firm. His company took longer to act, but they eventually did, not because of moral outrage, but because his judgment was questioned. How could someone so reckless in his personal life be trusted with millions in client assets? He was let go 3 weeks after the wedding, with a generous severance package and a non-disclosure agreement that prevented him from talking about the circumstances. I found this out not from him or Olivia, but from the internet, from strangers who tracked their social media, their LinkedIn profiles, their every public move. The attention was relentless. I received messages from journalists wanting interviews, from podcast hosts wanting to tell my side of the story, from random people offering sympathy or advice or judgment. I ignored all of it, focused on what I could control, which was very little. Robert filed the divorce papers immediately, citing adultery as grounds. In Massachusetts, proving adultery could affect asset division, and the evidence we had was overwhelming. Garrett's announcement had been filmed, the messages were documented, the timeline was clear. Olivia's lawyer, a woman named Jennifer Adams, called Robert 3 days after the filing asking if we could settle this quietly, avoid a trial, work out an agreement that didn't drag everything through public court proceedings. My client is willing to waive any claim to marital assets, Jennifer said during a conference call I listened in on from Robert's office. She understands the circumstances are unusual, and she doesn't want to fight. She just wants this over with as quickly as possible. Robert was skeptical. What's the catch? No catch. She's asking that certain details not be made part of the public record. The timeline, the evidence, the specific nature of the affair. She's already lost her job. She'd like to preserve what's left of her reputation. I thought about that for exactly 2 seconds. No, I said into the speakerphone. Everything stays on the record. Every message, every photo, every timeline detail. She didn't care about my reputation when she was sleeping with my best friend. I'm not protecting hers now. There was silence on the other end of the line. Then Jennifer sighed. I'll let her know. The divorce moved forward with everything documented. The court filings were public record, which meant anyone with internet access could read the exact details of how my wife had betrayed me. Part of me felt vindicated. Part of me just felt hollow. 3 weeks after the wedding, I met with a private investigator Liam had recommended, Graham Sullivan, 51 years old, former police detective with 19 years of experience in surveillance and infidelity cases. He worked out of a small office in Cambridge, and when I told him what I needed, he didn't waste time with sympathy. I need to know everything, I said. The whole timeline. Every time they met. Every lie she told. Everything. I need to understand what I missed. Graham nodded. I'll need access to any shared accounts, phone records if you have them, and contact information for anyone who might have witnessed suspicious behavior. I gave him everything. Bank statements, credit card records, Olivia's work schedule that she'd kept on our shared calendar, the names of friends who might have known or suspected. Graham promised preliminary findings within 10 days. One thing to prepare for, he said as I was leaving. Sometimes what you find is worse than what you imagine. Are you sure you want to go down this road? I was sure. I needed to know. Needed to understand the full scope of the betrayal so I could figure out how to move past it. The report Graham delivered was 53 pages long. 53 pages documenting every verified instance of contact between Olivia and Garrett over 14 months, cross-referenced with credit card charges, location data, and witness statements from people Graham had interviewed. The affair had started exactly when Garrett said, 2 weeks after I proposed. The first contact was a text message Olivia sent, asking if Garrett wanted to grab coffee and talk about something important. They met at a cafe downtown. According to security footage Graham had obtained from the cafe, they talked for 2 hours, left together, and went to Garrett's apartment. They were there for 3 hours. After that first encounter, the meetings became regular. Once a week at first, then twice a week, then 3 times. They rotated locations. Hotels mostly. Always paid in cash or on a credit card Garrett had in his name only. Sometimes they met during lunch breaks from work. Sometimes on evenings when Olivia told me she was meeting her sister or working late or going to a yoga class she'd never actually attended. The total count was 86 verified meetings over 14 months. 86 times they'd been together while I'd been planning a future with her. Graham had also found something else. A second phone. A burner phone Olivia had purchased 4 months into the affair, used exclusively for communication with Garrett. The phone records showed hundreds of text messages, hours of calls, photos they'd sent each other. Everything I'd missed, because I'd trusted her completely. There's more, Graham said when we met to go over the report. He pulled out a recording device. I was able to get a mutual friend to wear a wire during a conversation with Garrett. He didn't know he was being recorded. This is what he said about the affair. The recording was 15 minutes long. I listened to Garrett's voice explain how the affair had started, how Olivia had reached out to him feeling conflicted about the engagement, how they'd connected over their shared doubts about whether I was really the right person for her. She said he was safe, Garrett said on the recording. Like, reliable and stable and everything you're supposed to want. But there wasn't passion. She felt like she was settling. And when we started talking, when we really connected, she realized what she'd been missing. I felt sick listening to him talk about my relationship like he'd understood it better than I had. Like he'd done Olivia some kind of favor by sleeping with her behind my back. It got complicated when he actually went through with setting a date, Garrett continued. Olivia wanted to call off the wedding but didn't know how. She was afraid of what people would think, afraid of disappointing her family. So we just kept going, kept seeing each other, and told ourselves we'd figure it out after the wedding. Maybe take some time apart, let things cool down. I never meant to blow it up like I did at the reception. That was impulse. I saw them dancing and I just couldn't handle it anymore. Impulse. 14 months of calculated deception, and he wanted to frame the public revelation as impulse. Graham turned off the recording. That's admissible if you want to use it. Your lawyer can submit it as evidence of premeditation and bad faith. I took the recording, added it to my growing collection of evidence. The divorce proceedings continued. Olivia tried one more time to negotiate a private settlement, but I refused. Robert advised me that going to trial would be expensive, emotionally draining, and potentially unnecessary, given how clear-cut the adultery case was. But I wanted it on record. Wanted a judge to hear exactly what had happened. Wanted legal documentation that this wasn't just a relationship that fell apart, but a deliberate betrayal. The trial was scheduled for 6 weeks after the wedding. In the meantime, I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Raymond Foster, 61 years old, 33 years practicing clinical psychology, with a specialty in trauma and betrayal recovery. The first session was brutal. I sat in his office and tried to explain what had happened, tried to articulate the rage and humiliation and grief that was consuming me, and broke down halfway through. "You're grieving multiple losses simultaneously, Doctor," Foster said gently. "The loss of your marriage, the loss of your best friendship, the loss of trust in your own judgment. That's a tremendous amount to process." I wiped my eyes, felt ridiculous for crying in front of a stranger. "I keep thinking about every moment I missed, every sign I should have seen. How did I not know?" "Because you trusted them," Dr. Foster said. "Trust isn't naivety. It's what allows relationships to function. They exploited that trust. That's on them, not you." I wanted to believe that, but the shame of having been so thoroughly fooled was overwhelming. My friends rallied around me in ways I hadn't expected. The guys who'd been groomsmen at the wedding, people I'd known for years, showed up at Liam's apartment with food and beer and offers to help however they could. My college roommate Kevin flew in from Seattle just to spend a weekend making sure I was okay. "You need anything, you call me," Kevin said. "I don't care what time it is. You're not going through this alone." My parents struggled with how to help. My mother wanted to fix things, wanted to call Olivia and scream at her, wanted to hunt down Garrett and make him suffer. I had to explain repeatedly that the best thing she could do was give me space to process. My father took a more practical approach, helped me navigate the financial separation, made sure I was protecting myself legally. 6 weeks after the wedding, the divorce trial began. Judge Franklin Porter, 58 years old, 22 years on the bench, presided over the proceedings. He'd seen hundreds of divorce cases, maybe thousands, but when he reviewed the evidence Robert had submitted, his expression hardened. The trial lasted 2 days. Robert presented our case methodically. The video of Garrett's announcement, the messages from Olivia's phone, the private investigator's report documenting 86 verified meetings, the recording of Garrett explaining how the affair had started and why. Olivia's lawyer tried to argue that the public humiliation was punishment enough, that Olivia had already lost her job and her reputation, that continuing to drag her through court was cruel and unnecessary. Judge Porter wasn't sympathetic. "Mrs. Anderson," he said, addressing Olivia directly, "you entered into marriage with full knowledge that you'd been conducting an affair with your husband's best friend for over a year. You stood in front of your family and friends and made vows you knew you'd already broken. You had 14 months and 86 opportunities to tell the truth, and you chose deception every single time. The court is not in the business of protecting people from the consequences of their own actions." The divorce was granted with prejudice. All shared assets were divided in my favor, given the adultery clause and Olivia's willingness to waive claims in exchange for a faster resolution. The marriage was dissolved effective immediately. I walked out of that courtroom legally single, emotionally destroyed, and somehow still standing. The video of Garrett's announcement continued to circulate. 5 months after the wedding, it had over 15 million views. Olivia had moved to Portland to start over somewhere no one knew her story. Garrett had found work at a smaller firm, making a fraction of what he'd made before, his reputation in the industry permanently damaged. Last I heard, they weren't together. Whatever they'd had during those 14 months hadn't survived the aftermath. I heard this through mutual friends who still kept tabs on them, not because I asked, but because people felt compelled to keep me updated. I stopped asking them not to. Part of me needed to know they were suffering, needed confirmation that there were consequences for what they'd done. 6 months after the wedding, I ran into someone from Olivia's office at a coffee shop, a woman named Claire who'd worked with her for 3 years. We'd met a few times at company events. "I'm so sorry about what happened," Claire said when she saw me. We were both waiting for our orders, an awkward encounter neither of us had planned for. For what it's worth, a lot of us suspected something was going on, but we didn't know how to tell you. I stared at her. "You suspected?" There were late nights that didn't make sense, inconsistencies in her schedule. A few of us talked about it, wondered if we should say something, but we didn't have proof. We figured if something was really wrong, you'd know. People had suspected. People had seen signs. And no one had warned me because they hadn't wanted to get involved, hadn't wanted to be wrong, hadn't wanted to risk the awkwardness of accusing someone without solid evidence. I left that coffee shop feeling a new kind of anger, not just at Olivia and Garrett, but at every person who'd known or suspected and stayed silent. 8 months after the wedding, I started dating again. Slowly, carefully, with walls up so high I wasn't sure anyone would ever get past them. I met someone kind, someone who respected my boundaries, someone who understood when I needed space. We took it slow, built trust through consistency and time and small acts of honesty that I'd learned to recognize as precious. It felt different from what I'd had with Olivia, more grounded, more real, less about grand gestures and more about daily choices to show up and be present. I I still thought about the wedding sometimes, about standing there in my tuxedo, about Garrett grabbing that microphone, about watching my life explode in front of 180 witnesses, about Olivia's face when she realized he was serious, when she understood that he was actually going to expose everything. Mostly, I thought about how I'd walked out of that reception and survived, how I'd taken the worst moment of my life and built something new from what was left, how I'd learned that betrayal doesn't define you unless you let it. 1 year after the wedding, I got a message from Olivia. She'd found a way to contact me despite being blocked, sent an email to my work address. I know I have no right to reach out. I know I hurt you beyond measure, and I've spent every day since regretting my choices. I'm in therapy now, trying to understand why I did what I did, trying to become someone better. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I'm sorry. Truly, deeply sorry. You deserved so much better. I hope you found it. I read that message once, then deleted it. Some apologies come too late. Some damage can't be repaired with words. Olivia could spend the rest of her life in therapy, could become the best version of herself, could achieve enlightenment and perfect self-awareness. It wouldn't change what she did. Wouldn't give me back the year I spent planning a wedding to someone who was sleeping with my best friend. Wouldn't erase the memory of standing in front of everyone I knew while my humiliation was broadcast in real time. I thought about responding, about telling her I'd moved on, that I was happy now, that her apology meant nothing to me, but that would have been giving her something she didn't deserve, my time, my energy, my attention. So I did nothing. Let her message sit there in my deleted folder, another apology floating in the void. 2 years after the wedding, I heard through mutual friends that Garrett had tried to reach out, wanted to apologize, wanted some kind of reconciliation. I told those friends to tell him the same thing I'd told Olivia. I wanted zero contact. Some bridges, once burned, should stay ashes. My best man revealed at my wedding reception that he'd been sleeping with my wife since our engagement because he thought honesty justified betrayal. He thought dramatic confession was better than quiet deception. He thought he was doing me a favor, but all he did was reveal who they both really were. People willing to destroy everything for something they couldn't even make work afterward. People who confused selfishness with love and exposure with courage. People I was better off without. The wedding video still exists somewhere. Someone posts it periodically, and it goes viral again, generates new rounds of comments and think pieces. I don't watch it anymore. Don't need to relive that moment to remember what I learned. That some people will betray you in ways you can't imagine. That trust is precious, because it's fragile. That survival sometimes looks like cutting a wedding cake one moment and walking away the next. Garrett and Olivia both lost more than they stole from me. They lost careers, reputations, and whatever future they'd imagined together. And me? I lost a wife who was never worth keeping, and a best friend who was never really a friend. What I gained was harder to quantify but infinitely more valuable. Self-respect, clarity, the knowledge that I could survive the worst betrayal and come out whole on the other side. Thanks for watching till the end. Make sure to subscribe and like to not miss the next story.